and the US have been holding their first diplomatic and security dialogue this week, looking at shared security concerns in the region. What positive spin-offs will result from this meeting? And after King Salman of Saudi Arabia announced a change in the line of succession, we'll be asking what impact this will have not just within the kingdom, but on the broader world stage as well. Welcome to The Point, live from Beijing. I'm Lu Xin. China and the US sat down on Wednesday to forge closer cooperation on security concerns such as the nuclear crisis on the Korean Peninsula, South China Sea and terrorism. The first diplomatic and security dialogue was set up under the broader framework of the comprehensive dialogue mechanism that was agreed to during the Mar-a-Lago meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and his US counterpart Donald Trump in April. So might this be a stepping stone for China-US progress in realizing shared interests? How can China and the US narrow their differences on priority issues? I'm pleased to be joined today by Douglas Smith, Managing Director of Kent Strategies in Washington, D.C. Smith is also the former Assistant Secretary of U.S. Department of Homeland Security. By Professor Balbina Huang, Adjunct Assistant Professor at Georgetown University, also in Washington, D.C. Last but not least, in our Beijing studio, Zhao Hai, Research Fellow at the National Strategy Institute of Tsinghua University. Welcome to you all. Mr. Smith, the two countries discussed topics including the DPRK, South China Sea and anti-terrorism. Which for you is the most meaningful result of the dialogue so far?
I think the one to watch and where everything will focus will be on North Korea. You know, with the tragedy this week in the United States of the student that the North Koreans had imprisoned dying back here, I think the pressure upon finding a solution and how to take care of the North Korea situation will continue to center all of our discussions around it. You know, I think there are many topics that they want to address, but that is a very hot button item here, particularly in our U.S. Congress, our president. So I think we're going to be watching closely to see how that progresses, how we can try to deal with North Korea. I think percolating along the sidelines will be the ongoing discussions around cybersecurity. You know, I think there's a lot of mistrust between the two countries. But as particularly the Chinese economy continues to grow and intellectual property becomes more and more important in China, I think the Chinese will work more closely with the U.S. because they will have shared interests in protecting a lot of that intellectual property that both countries are coming up with.
Professor Huang, watching from your side, do you think that the Warmbier incident, his death, has putting extra pressure on the Chinese delegation to speed up their efforts to help solve the DPRK issue, or in any other way affected either the atmosphere or the content of the dialogue so far?
Well, it certainly affected internally within the United States. Unfortunately, as tragic as that incident was, and North Korea has essentially hijacked, as you said, the comprehensive strategic dialogue and the relationship between China and the United States, in a sense that has absolutely become the focus, both of the public and the media. But frankly speaking, it's really much broader. There should be much broader strategic and long-term issues that should be addressed in a much more comprehensive fashion.
Well, according to U.S. Secretary of State, North Korea is the top billing. And on this issue, some very important developments have been observed. For instance, according to the New York Times, U.S., China and the Republic of Korea are discussing the possibility of cutting down U.S. troops in ROK in exchange for the DPRK freezing its nuclear testing. At the same time, the DPRK's ambassador to India, Kia Chung-yun, told Indian media that, quote, under certain conditions, the DPRK would be willing to conduct dialogue on freezing its ballistic missile and nuclear tests. The last time the DPRK agreed to freezing such tests were in 2012. So, Mr. Zhao, what do you think of these developments? Are we potentially seeing a thawing of relations? And what about the coincidence of timing of these developments with the dialogue taking place in Washington, D.C.?
I think China would definitely welcome these two newly developments because China has suggested two-track solutions to the North Korean problem all along. And pushing to both sides to join talks, start negotiations. And the starting point is, of course, on the Korean side to step back their nuclear program, particularly freezing or capping their nuclear program on the first step, and then ultimately stop developing and also get rid of their nuclear program. On the U.S. side, China has already pushed the U.S. to recognize the security concerns of North Korea and also to reduce troops presence and also military exercise near the Korean Peninsula. So I think the recent development will be welcomed by China and also along the way that with the Chinese solution on the Korean Peninsula issue.
Mr. Smith, now U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said after the Wednesday meeting that China and the U.S. had agreed to halt business with any UN-designated North Korean entities. What's the significance of this move so far?
Look, I think that signals that they're trying to spread the pressure they put on North Korea even further. What will be interesting to watch is, will they take it to the second tier? Will the U.S. talk to countries like Egypt and other of our allies who do business with North Korea and place even more pressure upon them to tighten the purse strings on North Korea? I think China's in a tough spot. I think they are really trying to push North Korea to lower the temperature. I think the current administration of the United States is very impatient. While I think Rex Tillerson, Secretary Tillerson, is saying all the right things, President Trump, wants to see a big victory and he wants to see it fast. As long as I can remember, we've been trying to find a solution with North Korea. I'm not so certain it's going to happen overnight. The question will be, how will increased economic sanctions play out in Beijing if the U.S. plays that card here?
Well, Mr. Zhao, now Tillerson also maintained at the beginning of his press briefing that China has a so-called diplomatic responsibility to reining the DPRK. And however, China has always said the crux and the focal point of the issue lies with the two countries, the United States and the DPRK. What kind of diplomatic efforts do you think should be made to ratchet down the crisis other than economic pressures?
I think if you look at China's solution to the problem, China always put this in the context of the UN security resolution, and China has been following and executing the UN resolution closely. So I think in terms of diplomatic pressure, China will be working with the United States and also putting close relations with the United States, working on the economic issues, putting more pressure on North Korea. On the other hand, China can also, under the table, trying to bring all parties into the negotiation, particularly South Korea and Russia, in that sense that they will, China will play a very important intermediate role.
So long as the United States insists on putting the key to the solution on China's hands, do you think that's going to be conducive to finding the long-term solution to this problem? Professor Huang?
Well, apparently President Trump said yesterday that it sounds like he's moving away from relying on China. He said that China has tried and that it seems that China is unable to do more. So, and I have to disagree a little bit with the other panelist who said that, this president is very impatient. Yes, he may be impatient about a lot of things, and he certainly wants very large wins. But it's very interesting. On North Korea, he's been extremely patient and has actually shown surprising restraint, especially in his very conciliatory attitude towards China, at least publicly, which of course is very ironic because he said strategic patience is over. But in the end, I think he understands, along with every other U.S. president has understood, that there is no easy solution to North Korea and that there are very few options. And so here we are, 20 years later, pursuing very similar policies.
Professor Huang, what do you think are the possible reasons behind President Trump's apparent patience here? I mean, is he just really brewing something big at the end of the day, or is he really advised by the right people, knowing what the disastrous consequence would be to be not patient?
Well, you're asking the question that everybody in D.C. is trying to figure out, is what is President Trump thinking? I don't think any of us have quite figured this out yet, and perhaps we won't. So I don't know, and unfortunately, I think one of the The downsides right now is he does not seem to have many Asia advisors. Hopefully they'll be in place soon. But again, I think the difference, and earlier it was stated that there are these new developments about a possible freeze. I actually do not believe these are new developments at all. The North Korean statement by the ambassador to India, that is not a new position. That has been a signal North Korea has consistently sent, certainly throughout the Obama administration and most recently. What is new is that there is a new president now in South Korea. And I think for the first time, we have a president in South Korea that is actually willing to pursue that position, which is what North Korea has essentially been saying consistently.
It's very interesting.
But there has been no change really in the United States.
It's interesting that you mentioned actually South Korea's new president Moon Jae-in is about to visit the United States. Mr. Smith, how do you see the possibility? Right. Yeah, how do you see the possibility of his visit bringing any thawing opportunity to the ties between the U.S. and DPRK?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to see any more thawing of it, but I do think he'll bring an interesting perspective. I think it will bring some, new sort of thinking in how to deal with the process. I think that, President Trump, the good thing on this dialogue that started with China is probably his two most accomplished and smartest cabinet secretaries started off the dialogue. In General Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, and Secretary Tillerson at State. And while neither one of them may be sort of insider Asia expert, they are global experts. And I think that offers a fabulous perspective for them to bring to it. And I think with the visit of the new South Korean president to the United States, it will continue to help to educate this president on the complexities of the situation and that there are no easy solutions. I mean, as my fellow guest mentioned, I mean, these talks have been going on for years and years and years. The challenge with negotiating, though, is you need to be able to have a position to walk away from. It's much like if you were to go in and buy a car in the United States, the best way to buy a car is the willingness to walk off the lot. And the question is the United States willing to walk off the lot if North Korea won't do what we're asking them to do? And it puts China in a very precarious position. If we walk off the lot and really tie China's hands on how to deal with this situation and the explosive situation in North Korea, where do we go from there?
And Mr. Zhao, what is your take of the importance and the potential role that the South Korean president could play here?
I think the South Korean president, its coming visit to the United States will present a new opportunity for the U.S. and South Korea to coordinate policies against North Korea. And in this sense, because right now China has already coordinated policies with the United States, in the future the three countries can work together and facing with North Korea to provide a common front line in terms of the bottom line of the future negotiations.
Thank you very much. We have to leave it there. Douglas Smith, Managing Director of Kent Strategies, Professor Balbina Huan, Adjunct Assistant Professor from Georgetown University, and Zhao Hai, Research Fellow from the National Strategy Institute of Tsinghua University. And here is my first point. Well, it's well known within the business world that if you really want to successfully negotiate with someone, a prerequisite is to understand what is driving them and how they have come to their conclusions in the first place. This is also the strategy used by top diplomats. By understanding the philosophy of your opposite members, you can more easily come up with workable solutions to specific issues. Understanding leads to easier debate and possible solutions. So this is the main value of the strategic talks like this one, in my eyes. Saudi Arabia is hardly known for surprises, but on Wednesday, 81-year-old King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud promoted his 31-year-old son, Mohammed bin Salman, to become Crown Prince. Mohammed bin Salman will take over the role of the former Crown Prince, 57-year-old Mohammed bin Nayef, who had served as Interior Minister since 2015. Relatively unknown in the kingdom when his father came to power 2.5 years ago, Mohammed bin Salman serves as Defense Minister, overseeing the state oil monopoly and working to overhaul the Saudi economy in the face of a dramatic drop in oil prices. So what effect will this sudden change have not only in Saudi Arabia but in the international order as well? I'm pleased to be joined by Professor He Wenping, a Senior Research Fellow from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences in Beijing, and from Amman, Jordan, by Dr. Florence Prince Eid Ogden, Chief Economist for Arabia Monitor. Ladies, welcome to the show. Professor Eid Ogden, the new Crown Prince's mandate is formidable. Overhaul an ailing economy, open up a closed society and project the influence of a usually cautious country in new and robust ways. What was it that led the king to make this surprise announcement? Did anyone see this coming?
Yes, I think the entire community of Saudi Arabia watchers and analysts saw this coming. Didn't quite see it coming necessarily this week, but I think it's been clear all along that between the Crown Prince and the Deputy Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, only one of the two men could remain there after the king passes away. And I think what the king chose to do is actually wise, because he chose to pass the reins on to his son before his final days. And that is a way of ensuring stability in the kingdom, and it's a way of ensuring that the young prince has time to bed in properly if he is to succeed his father, which clearly is the plan in the father's mind.
Mm-hmm.
It would have looked awkward otherwise. And I think that this is a step toward more stability and the clarification of the succession in Saudi Arabia, because the question for 2 years has been who would succeed the king, and now it's clear.
Mm-hmm. Professor He, now Crown Prince Mohammed is not an unknown quantity. He has already held many important positions since becoming Deputy Crown Prince in April 2015, and has effectively served as the kingdom's CEO on both foreign and domestic policies. What can you tell us about his background?
Well, yes, even though he's a relatively new face in the international stage, but during the past 2 years, his capacity and also his performance, either in the economic front and also in the military front, has already showed us now he's becoming someone. So he's ready to take the highest position in Saudi. So, for example, in that past year's Yemen war, and himself, if I remember clearly, even piloting this helicopter to do the bombing in the first fighting front. And also that shows people that he is a very brave young guy, and also is willing to take the risky, even in the very front fighting line. And also like this Saudi's privatization of this national oil company, and also in the way of making 2030 this economic restructuring program for Saudi, I think we can all see his effort behind all this approach and this big move.
Mm-hmm. Now, much of today's Saudi Arabia owes its survival to the historical pact forged between Imam Mohammed bin Saud and Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Wahab in 1744, which led to the founding of the first Saudi state. Now, Dr. Eid Ogden, in 1902, Abdulaziz bin Saud retook Riyadh with the help of the Ikhwan, or Muslim Brotherhood, and made it the center for the unification of Saudi Arabia. The problem is what Wahhabism as a doctrine has been accused of underpinning the actions of the Islamic State, and Saudi religious fatwas and opinions have been used to encourage people to join terror groups. Is this fundamentally what is behind the calls to modernize the kingdom?
I think what's behind the modernization of the kingdom is the need to renew the social contract between the royal family and the rest of the population, in tandem with the requirements of the modern age. This social contract is being renewed between the Al Sauds and the religious establishment, in the sense that the relationship is evolving, and in the sense that what is expected of the religious establishment by way of fatwas, or the lack thereof in certain instances, is being clarified in order to suit the times better, to be more accommodating of what is required today. And the economic dimension is absolutely clear. It is something that is common to the rest of the Arab world. There's a high unemployment problem that we see across the region. And the social contract in Saudi Arabia is also evolving in order to address that. And that is the reason why the Vision 2030 has been promulgated, and that is the reason why the young prince has put all of his weight behind it and all of his credibility behind it. And if this renovation of the social contract in Saudi Arabia is to succeed, it would need to benefit from longevity and continuity. And the change that was made this year and the implementation of the promotion of His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman maximizes the chance of implementation, meaning it reduces execution risk, because otherwise, had he been sidelined, it is possible at the succession, meaning when the king passes, that 2 years of work on implementing the beginning of Vision 2030 could have been sidelined as well. Mm-hmm. And so what this does is it creates continuity and allows the social contract to continue to be rolled out, the new social contract.
Professor He, in announcing the move, the king has literally banked his kingdom on a 15-year reform program headed by Mohammed bin Salman that many see as the only viable solution to an existential threat. Private enterprise is being courted, cinemas are in the pipeline, concerts have been held, though only for men, and the emotive issue of women being allowed to drive is again on the table. This would appear to place the royal house of Saud at odds with the powerful religious order. Is this announcement creating any new split between the two sides in your eyes?
Well, I don't see this kind of trend. Actually, you know, after the Arab Spring took place in Tunisia and then goes to Egypt and Libya and now in Syria. So all those waves of this Arab Spring actually also give some early warning, you know, even to those kingdom countries, not only Saudi and other countries in the Middle East as well. So from the perspective of those royal family, they see also this threat to their authority, to their governance. So that's why they want to continue to combine this governance from the kingdom with those religions they have been engaged with for such a long time, because they see this is a very good way and a very strong way to continue this royal governance.
Dr. Eid Oakden, young Saudis eager for change see the new crown prince as a modernizer and celebrate the surprise announcement on social media. But many of the older generations are worried about cutbacks in welfare spending and pensions. Does the king's surprise decision come with risks for the stability of the Saudi royal family?
I wouldn't take it that far. It might come with risk in the sense that it alarms certain people. But I think that if you've watched Saudi Arabia over the past 2 years, since the passing away of King Abdullah, there have been some very rapid and alarming decisions taken, including the sidelining of a younger brother in order to place in position the outgoing Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Nayef, including the elevation of Prince Mohammed bin Salman from a mere advisor to his father's royal court to Deputy Crown Prince. So this is only another step in a series of fairly radical changes that have been sweeping through the kingdom since the arrival of King Salman. What is certain is that he is bold and he has taken the decision to move the governance of the kingdom into the hands of the younger generation. So the royal decree from yesterday also promotes a whole series of younger princes from across the royal family, very intelligently, from across different branches of the family, into positions of authority, such as, for example, the new Minister of Interior, who is 33 years old. So I think that yes, it could be alarming to some people, but it's not new anymore that Saudi Arabia is taking bold steps toward the future. Again, as I said, the more the younger generation have a hold on the changes that are underway, the lower the execution risk, not the higher the risk. And I think the threat to the royal family is probably lower rather than higher. I think this could be the beginning of the evolution of royal rule in Saudi Arabia toward primogeniture, meaning from father to son rather than from father to brother. The decree that was issued yesterday states that it would still be otherwise, but that can also be changed. And if you look at all royal families in the world, the reign passes from father to son or daughter, where the situation allows, but not from a king to brother.
Yes,
and
let's talk a little bit.
When we have a situation of.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the foreign front. Professor He, now Maha Yahya, the director of the Carnegie Middle East Center in Beirut, has warned that this is a time when we really need some quiet diplomacy. We need cool-headed politicians who are able to defuse tensions rather than inflate them. There has been a far more aggressive stance in the Saudi foreign policy under King Salman, and now it might get worse. Do you share his concerns?
Well, I do share about this concern because from the past 2 years, Saudi's very bold diplomacy, even the recent one, this collective diplomatic ties cutting with the Qatar. So, but all those very aggressive diplomacy, actually it has been done and even dominated by this young Salman. It's rather coming from this his father, the 82 years old Salman king. So we can see now from the shadow or from the behind of the screen, now it's coming to the front now. We will see this very ambitious and very aggressive, those diplomatic way. Maybe we'll go further rather than getting us.
Let's keep a close watch to this developing situation. We have to leave it there. Many thanks, Professor He Wenping from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences and Dr. Florence Eat-Ogden, Chief Economist for Arabia Monitor. And here is my last point. Many Western liberals have long castigated Saudi Arabia for its lack of freedoms. Many are describing what is taking place as nothing short of a cultural transformation disguised as economic reform, and areas that had always been thought of as too difficult to tackle are now being openly targeted. But one of the problems has been that the population is in many ways more conservative than the leadership. Since King Salman came to power, he has been trying to redefine Wahhabism as a tradition responsible for personal piety, but having no business whatsoever on the way the kingdom is run. So while there appears to be a major push to reinterpret the basic faith, it will not be an easy task selling this idea to some 2/3 of the country's 31 million inhabitants, half of whom are under the age of 25. There is still a long way to go in that respect. And that's all for this edition of The Point. As always, follow me on Twitter or visit our Facebook page using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN Live to watch our show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.